Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to revisit an album which I haven't looked at for, I think it's 7 years now. I think I reviewed it back in 2016 in Greece on an extremely hot day on the balcony of the apartment we were staying in. Unbelievably hot. Thought Hungary was hot in the summer, but nothing compared to Greece. Anyway, the album is called, appropriately, Hotter Than July. And seeing as we're in the middle of the July heat wave here, at least in Hungary, and the UK, I think is quite nice as well, although it's raining at Wimbledon, I saw just now. That's the back cover with the flaming piano. Very good packaging, actually, and the lyrics come in the gatefold. And my original copy, this is a Portuguese copy, my original copy didn't come with an inner sleeve. This is on the Motown label, although by all accounts he wasn't happy with Motown's promotion of the previous album, Secret Life of Plants. So he was kind of umming and ahhing about whether to stay with them, but this album came out on Motown. And this insert I just picked up quite recently in Budapest, actually, at a second-hand record shop. So that's a kind of collage of civil rights demonstrations and stuff like that. And this is a portrait of Martin Luther King, picture of Martin Luther King. And as you may know, the last song on this album, Happy Birthday, is a kind of encouragement for there to be a national holiday on the day that Martin Luther King was born, 15th of January, 1929, by the way. Died April 4th, assassinated 1968. And so Stevie wrote this nice little message on the inner sleeve here. It is believed that for a man to lay down his life for the love of others is the supreme sacrifice. Jesus Christ, by his own example, showed us that there is no greater love. For nearly 2,000 years now, we have been striving to have the strength to follow that example. Martin Luther King was a man who had that strength. He showed us non-violently a better way of life, a way of mutual respect, helping us to avoid much bitter confrontation and inevitable bloodshed. We still have a long road to travel until we reach the world that was his dream. We in the United States must not forget either his supreme sacrifice or that dream. I and a growing number of people believe that it is time for our country to adapt legislation that will make January the 15th, Martin Luther King's birthday, a national holiday, both in recognition of what he achieved and as a reminder of the distance which still has to be travelled. Well, it's, we've made progress since 1980, but it's far from reaching the dream of Martin Luther King still, so it's interesting that song still has resonance and that message still has resonance. And some view that song Happy Birthday as very commercial, but I think it's absolutely timeless and probably the best track on the album. But we'll come to that. I'll go through the tracks and a bit of background. So the album was released on September the 29th, 1980. Reached number 3 in the US, number 2 in the UK, pretty successful. Not quite as successful as Songs in the Key of Life, which had topped the charts, and some of his other vintage 70s albums, maybe it wasn't quite on a par with those. This album marks the end of his golden period, a bit like Elton John would have a golden period over the similar period of time, 71 to 80, and David Bowie similarly as well, and quite a few artists who were big in the 60s and 70s would struggle to maintain their quality in the 80s, so Stevie Wonder's not alone, and he did come up with some good stuff after 1980, it just wasn't very consistent, and that's not having a dig, it's just reality. Well, it's my opinion, you don't have to agree with it. Looking at the musician credits, I was interested to see, Nathan Watts is playing bass, who'd been with him since Songs in the Key of Life, and would remain with him for a number of years. And I'm very interested to see Dennis Davis playing drums on track 1, 5 and 6. So we're talking Did I Hear You Say You Love Me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If You Read My Mind and Master Blaster Jamming is Dennis Davis playing drums. And I looked it up. It's the same Dennis Davis who's playing with David Bowie around this time and a few years before. He's featured on Low, Heroes, The Lodger, and Scary Monsters. So that I thought was very interesting. Didn't know that. I was trying to work out, because some of the album's a bit of a mixture between sort of straightforward commercial funky songs like the opener, Did I Hear You Say You Love Me, to these sort of kind of a bit morose ballads about the breakup of a relationship or something. Rocket Love, Lately, and I Ain't Gonna Stand For It would fall into that category. And I was trying to work out who Stevie was singing about, but maybe he's not singing about anyone particular, because he was married to Sarita Wright in 70 and divorced in 72. He had a daughter with Yolanda Simmons in 75 and a son with her in 77. I'm not sure how long they stayed together. This album came out in 80. So maybe it's about the relationship with her breaking up, I'm not sure. Or maybe it's just him writing a lyric. But I Ain't Gonna Stand For It is quite a bitter song. But, you know, quite showing it from his point of view. His partner's obviously been cheating on him, and he's not going to stand for it. And then there's a very interesting verse for the 12-inch version, which I don't believe I've ever heard. I'm going to have to check it out. But it's some quite troubling lyrics in this verse. I feel the truth, and it sure don't lie, 'cause somebody done cut off a piece of my pie. I'm what you call a non-violent man, until I get something dangerous in my hand. But I ain't going to stand for it. So I'm not sure what that's alluding to. I mean, it sounds pretty violent to me, but it's just a lyric at the end of the day. I thought that was quite interesting. I Ain't Going to Stand For It was a big hit single in US number 11, US number 10. But the lead-off single, Master Blaster brackets Jammin', was number 5 in the US and number 2 in the UK, and was inspired by Bob Marley, Stevie Wonder meeting Bob Marley in 79, and apparently they got on pretty well. And if you remember some of the one of the lyrics in Master Blaster, in the park I hear rhythms, Marley's Hot on the Box, nice tribute to Bob there, and a big hit single. Happy Birthday was not a hit single in the US for some reason, but got all the way to number 2 in the UK. And as I said earlier, I think it's timeless. I was trying to, for years I struggled should have just looked up the lyrics, but that, you know, the beginning of the third verse, when he's singing in a kind of growl, and he's singing "The time is overdue," and I never quite understood that line. For people like me and you, you know, the way to truth is love and unity to all God's children. It should be a great event. And the whole day should be spent in full remembrance of those who lived and died for the oneness of all people. It's a wonderful song and a wonderful tribute to Martin Luther King, who's one of the all-time greats. So yeah, that's Happy Birthday. Those were the singles. There's a lot of other good tracks on here. There's a very early track from '66 called All I Do, with Stevie Wonder co-wrote with a couple of people who helped out with the lyrics. But that's quite a nice song. Rocket Love is a song which he does perform in concert quite often, from what I was looking at. There was, you know, that live album which came out, Natural Wonder, in '95. Rocket Love is featured on there, as I think is Master Blaster, but no other track from this album. And he doesn't perform Happy Birthday very often. I was looking at the 1980 tour. He did perform it a handful of times, and he did perform lately a handful of times, but not that many, which is quite interesting. Rocket Love, another one of these sad breakup songs, I'm afraid. You took me riding in your rocket, gave me a star, but at a half a mile from heaven, you dropped me back down to this cold, cold world. And he repeats that lyric many, many times, and it's a sad song, and he did do it live on that Natural Wonder album. Then we've got the single I Ain't Gonna Stand For It. As If You Read My Mind is a catchy song, and Sarita Wright's doing backing vocals. And on side 2, after the jamming Bob Marley tribute, we've got Do Like You, which is possibly the weak link on the album, but not bad. And then a very interesting song called Cash in Your Face. And I did a bit of research, and this is about prejudice against giving black people rented accommodation in the US at the time. Maybe, I'm not sure about now, but we're talking late 70s, 1980. And I have the feeling that Stevie was going to write something a bit ruder in the chorus, and then thought better of it, so has a kind of lyric which doesn't make sense. You might have the cash, but you can not cash in your face. We don't want your kind living in here. I have a feeling the original lyric might have been something with a swear word or two in it. But anyway, I think it's a very good cynical song. You know, when I can't take the time out to check your credit card because the computer just broke down today. Well, I'll stop by here tomorrow to complete our interview, but I know what you're going to say. And then the chorus, you might have the cash, but you can not cash in your face. So such a funny lyric, considering it means absolutely nothing from what I can see. And then I just want to talk about the tour that he did to promote this album. He was in Oakland Coliseum, California, on December 8th, 1980. And you'll know what that date signifies if you're a Beatles fan, or even if you're not a Beatles fan, you may know. And so these are in the days before mobile phones. So people went into the stadium, presumably before the concert started, waited around for the concert to start. Not sure when it did start, but the news of John's death would have happened sometime in the middle of the concert, and Stevie was informed at some time during the concert of John's death. And if anyone was there, by the way, at Oakland, please comment in the comments below, because I'd be very interested to hear. But from what I can gather, Stevie came on, I'm not sure if it was halfway through or before the encore, and announced the death of John and said, don't like to be the one to be the bearer of bad news, but someone's just been shot 3 times, and I'm talking about, and then he looked towards the audience with glazed eyes and said, I'm talking about John Lennon, and everyone was stunned into silence. And then he said a few nice words about John, and then he did Happy Birthday as a kind of tribute, and then he has a huge standing ovation at the end. It must have been very emotional to be a musician who did actually know John off and on over the years, and to have to do a concert on the very day, the very hour that John died. It must have been heartbreaking for the crowd as well. So please, if you were there, or if you know someone who was there, please comment. I'd be very interested to hear that. So I think this album is pretty decent. I mean, there's a couple of filler, if I'm being harsh, but there's some solid singles, and this was a return to form commercially, certainly after Secret Life of Plants, although that album has its merits. It's probably number 2 for me in my affections after Songs in the Key of Life, with apologies to Inner Visions and fulfilling this first finale talking book. I will get round to reviewing those albums at some stage. I just don't feel quite qualified enough, don't know those albums quite well enough to do the review, but don't worry, I've got that on my list. So that was Hotter Than July from Stevie Wonder. Thanks for watching. See you next time.